Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
Seen limited duty so far today. They fake it to him.
Mark Barron is the SEC's Defensive Player of the Week. He logged 7 total tackles with an interception and a fumble recovery in the Tide's 27-11 win at Penn State. The interception ended a Penn State drive at the UA 9-yard line in the third quarter, and the fumble recovery stopped the Nittany Lions at the Alabama 35-yard line. Without those two plays, it could have been a different game. Barron's pick was the 11th of his career, and that ties for 11th on the all-time list at Alabama. And with that, we say good evening, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. Once again tonight, ice-cold Pepsi. Let's see how cold it is.
How cold is it? Cold?
Icy.
Wow.
I always put it in the freezer for about 20 minutes before you get here. That's the trick. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. And the Pepsi's great, but so is the play of the Alabama football team coming off a big victory over Penn State. Specifically, let's talk about the play of the quarterback, AJ McCarron. Coach Nick Saban continues to say that it's a 2-quarterback race and they'll continue to divide the reps evenly in practice. But the bottom line is AJ McCarron started against Penn State and played practically the whole game until mop-up time right at the end.
Well, I don't think that was really unexpected, Gary, unless the game got a little bit more out of hand. I think they wanted to find something consistent at Penn State and go with it. And AJ responded well. Now, had he not maybe responded as well as he did, perhaps Phillip would have come in and played some. But, you know, again, I thought AJ performed really well. You know, you're talking about a kid that goes to his first road game in front of 108,000 people. I mean, I thought he responded really well.
Well, you know, the bottom line in playing quarterback for Nick Saban is not necessarily about what you do, but what you don't do. We know AJ's talented, as is Phillip Sims, but McCarron in this game looked a lot like Greg McElroy or John Parker Wilson, and that's a compliment. He controlled the tempo of the game. He took what the defense gave him. He threw it underneath. He didn't take the sacks. He didn't throw the interceptions. In short, he managed the game very well.
Well, I think when you look at what Nick Saban asked his quarterback to do, it's no secret. I mean, it's like Bear Bryant used to say, we've got to teach you how not to lose a game before we teach you to win it, and that's kind of what AJ's responsibility is. Just don't lose the game, and he performed well. Again, you mentioned some of the nice throws he made, especially to Michael Williams. Those were some really good throws, and so he managed the offense really well.
Yeah, he inserted the ball in some really tight windows there and got it to the receivers. Well, McCarron plays most of the game. Quarterback Phillip Sims did get in late in the contest after the game was basically decided. But Nick Saban said again on Monday, Rodney, that it's important that Phillip Sims keep a positive attitude about being a quarterback at Alabama.
It's probably more difficult when you're not the starter or you didn't start the game to be prepared to play the game as it is for the guy that knows he's going to go out there and play. So that takes a tremendous amount of maturity. It takes a competitive personality that you're driven to want to be the best, and you're going to continue to work to be the best at your position regardless of the circumstance that you find yourself in, and that you can't be result-oriented and say that because I'm where I am now, that defines me. That doesn't define you. You define yourself in terms of who you want to be and what you want to be and how you want to go about doing it.
Some really positive comments from Nick Saban there in regards to the quarterback situation. And with McCarron right now seemingly the starter, but Phillip Sims continuing to get a lot of practice reps. And as we know, at any position, but particularly quarterback where you touch it every snap, basically, there's always a possibility of an injury. Phillip Sims, as Nick Saban just said, has to stay ready to play, has to continue to prepare like he's the starter, and something tells me he's going to get some more opportunities this season.
Well, look back to 1989. Jeff Dunn was a starter, and then he goes down. Gary Hollingsworth comes on. Nobody expected anything out of him. He goes on to become the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. And that year, that's just one example of many. Phillip Sims, I know he's disappointed, wants to play. He's got a bright future. The thing about it is he has to, in the meantime, continue to prepare himself mentally, Gary. That's the key thing, especially with a young player, not to get disappointed, but to continue to prepare himself mentally for that opportunity so when it arises, he's ready, at least mentally.
It should arise this Saturday, you would think, against North Texas, a game that Alabama should have in hand fairly early in the game. I would expect to see Phillip Sims get quite a few opportunities against the Mean Green.
Yeah, and he would. And again, what I was referring to was, you know, in the event of an injury.
Sure.
You never know when a guy is going to go down. And certainly, you know, Phillip needs to continue to prepare himself mentally to be the starter.
That's right, but injury or not, expect to see Phillip Sims a lot on Saturday. Well, still to come on TITV, we'll preview the Tide's next opponent, the aforementioned Mean Green, and we'll make our predictions. Also ahead, one Tide wide receiver will be back this weekend, while another, well, we still don't know what's up with Duron Carter. We'll discuss the return of Darius Hanks and update you on Carter's situation. Also, here on TITV, as always, we'll take your phone calls and get to your emails. There's the information on the screen on how to get in touch with us, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or email us at TITV@WVUATV.com. Stay tuned. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. And we're back on Tider Insider TV. I'm Gary Harris. He's Rodney Orr. John Huddleston's our producer. Jonathan Newman is our technical director. And we appreciate you joining us. Time to talk receivers. That's been a hot topic for Alabama going all the way back to the summer. First, let's start with some good news. Darius Hanks played in 2007. Alabama didn't think that was a problem, played in one game, later redshirted that year, 2 games that year, and later redshirted that year, but it came back to bite just a little bit in that he had to sit out the first 2 games this year. Well, Alabama's 2-0, and he's back on Saturday, and he is, along with Mays, the 2 most experienced wide receivers on the team. So obviously, it's going to help Alabama's offense. Yeah, a lot of experience, Gary, and to a really otherwise inexperienced core when you consider he and Mays are the only 2 guys returning with a lot of experience. So, you know, again, Darius Hanks has really had 2 good years, 2009 last season. And, you know, he was getting better and better and better. So I think that obviously his leadership, his ability to make big plays, certainly help the offense. One thing Nick Saban talked about yesterday, his absence helped, though, some of these young wide receivers like Kenny Bell and DeAndre White and Norwood. They got to play a lot, and against Penn State, really the wide receiver play I thought was better than the week before against Penn State. Yeah, and DeAndre didn't actually catch any balls against Penn State, but Kenny Bell had that crossing route that he caught, and Norwood had several catches there in the early on. So, again, those guys are starting to develop, and we talked about them in the summer. You know, Kenny Bell and Kevin Norwood could be a couple of guys to keep an eye on. Now, the other news, I don't want to say bad news because it's not bad yet, but it's no news in regards to Duron Carter. We all assumed once he started practicing that he was going to be able to play. We expected him to play against Penn State. He didn't even make the trip. So, Rodney, I guess the situation now is when he plays, he'll play, and I don't know how anybody outside of the people that are dealing with this transcript issue can make any predictions on when that's going to be. Well, and here's the way you have to look at this situation. We've heard so many different things. Even before fall camp, when was he going to be here? Of course, he didn't get here till, what, the last week to start practice. So the best policy on Duron Carter is just wait till he's actually on the field. When we see a number 8 run out there and line up, it won't be Jeffrey Pagan. That's what I'm just going to say. On the offense. I was going to say on the offense because there's a number 8 on the defense. Jeffrey Pagan, the defensive tackle who's already played this year. But when a number 8 lines up there on the offense, good bet it's going to be Duron Carter. Will it be Saturday? We shall see. Well, coming up, should Twitter be a no-no for Crimson Tide football players? And the Mean Green, well, seems like the only thing mean about them is their nickname. Coming up, we'll look ahead to the Tide's next opponent. They do have a head football coach, though, that's got a lot of experience, a name you'll recognize. Also, we get to your phone calls and emails. Again, the number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882, or you can email us, TITV@WVUATV.com. We'll be back after this. All right, following the Penn State game on Saturday, Alabama quarterback Phillip Sims said this on Twitter, quote, "Don't even feel like going out. Too much on my mind right now." Well, you know Alabama fans, they got a dose of that. And to me, it's, you know, it's a pretty vague statement. Doesn't necessarily mean that anything was wrong, but Alabama fans got a hold of it and turned it into an entirely different deal. Well, let me tell you this. First of all, Phillip's like any other highly recruited player. He's a very competitive guy, and he wants to play, but I certainly don't see anything negative in that comment. Sims came back with this today. Why do people take Twitter so serious? It's just Twitter. Twitter is for me to say what's on my mind, not for someone to criticize everything I say. Monday, Nick Saban was asked what his policy is in regards to this form of social media.
Policy is, you know, we don't want guys to Twitter information about our team that creates an advantage for the other team. And we we monitor guys' Twitter so that they are not putting information out that could be personally damaging to them in the future in terms of the kind of information that they choose to put out there.
All right, Rodney, interesting. Nick Saban known as a disciplinarian, yet there are other coaches, Steve Spurrier, who might not be known as a great disciplinarian, who has said, no, you're not going to be allowed to tweet. Other coaches have said that. Nick Saban says, we'll continue to let players tweet, but we do monitor what they say on their Twitter accounts. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think it's good that they do monitor it, obviously, and I think they should allow them to tweet as long as everyone stays within the rules and abides by what Nick Saban's policies are. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Young kids, allow them to have a little bit of fun, but again, they've got to keep things into perspective.
And again, on Philip Simms' initial tweet Saturday night, you think a little too much was made out of that?
Hey, listen, be honest. I mean, if you were in Philip Simms' shoes and you didn't play at Penn State, you'd be down too. Right. I don't think there's any question about that. I think everyone should understand that. He's a team player, and he certainly wants Alabama to win, and he wants to contribute, but didn't have that opportunity to play on the field, but did some things off the field to help AJ, I'm sure. So, again, I understand his disappointment. I don't think that comment really meant anything negative towards the Alabama program.
All right, back to the on-the-field discussion. Alabama's defense just continues to play like an Alabama defense. In the first two games, the Tide has given up only 9 points per game. Rodney, the thing about this defense, they don't seem to, we know they got some really good players, so take this the right way, but they don't seem to have a Cornelius Bennett, a Derek Thomas, a Keith McCants, a John Copeland, one guy that steals the spotlight. But 1 through 11, they're solid. And even the guys that come off the bench. I mean, there's a lot of really good players on this team.
Yeah, I have a lot of outstanding players, Gary. A lot of guys that will probably go fairly high in the draft at some point. But as you mentioned, they play solidly. If you look at one area, it was good to see those 2 forced fumbles by Dre, because what they come up with last year, 4 on the season, got 2 against Penn State. They were really big plays. Again, as you watch it, though, got the pick from Barron, but still want to tighten up on that third down defense.
Yeah, gave up some third downs, and even though the game was over at 27-3, Nick Saban, and I agree, you never quit playing. That was not good in 2 minutes. They let Penn State march it down the field on a 3rd and 20. They convert, and they get the touchdown, then walk in basically on the 2-point conversion. So always something to work on, regardless of how good you think you are. Yeah,
and again, you're talking about losing that focus, even though, Nick Saban always talks about keep your eyes off the scoreboard. That was a time that they should have kept the eyes off the scoreboard.
Yeah, could have been 27-3. Instead, it's 27-11. All right, this coming game, probably not going to be that big a test, but North Texas does have some players. Breland Chancellor, you're going to see him here, number 80, is one of the biggest all-purpose threats in the country. I mean, the kid's really good.
94 yards last week. He's got over 500 yards of all-purpose yards the last 2 weeks. Gary plays wide receiver as well as return kicks. They have an outstanding running back, Lance Dunbar, who's number 3 among all returning running backs in college football, 3,214 yards in his career. So, they've got some players offensively.
Yeah, the bottom line is those 2 young men can play for anybody in the country.
They're very good.
The problem, though, is most of these young men on this team couldn't play in the Southeastern Conference. And, Dan McCarron is a respected coach. You remember the job he did at Iowa State as head coach, and then for the last several years he was a defensive line coach at the University of Florida for Urban Meyer, so he's got a nice resume, but this is one of those games where Alabama wants to be focused on winning the game. At the same time, they want to play a lot of people, don't want to get anybody hurt, and let's be honest, Rodney, they're probably working some on Arkansas this week as well.
When's the last time Alabama's played North Texas in the 3rd week of the season? Do you remember that?
Just it wasn't long ago.
National championship in 2009.
A couple years ago. So when Todd Dodge was the head coach.
That's right.
So, hey, maybe it'll set up well. 3rd game 2009. 3rd game 2011. Is a national championship in the future for Alabama? Well, we don't know the answer yet, but we do know this. You better not lose to the Mean Green.
Well, I know you're superstitious. That's why I brought that up.
Yeah, well, it always bodes well to have those little kind of tie-ins there. But we do give them respect. They're a Division I football team. Got a beautiful new stadium out there that they just christened. Dan McCarron is going to do a good job, but they're not ready yet for the University of Alabama. And we'll find out more about how we feel about this game later on in the show. Right now, let's go to the phones. First up is Barry over in Pelham. Barry, welcome into the program.
Good afternoon, guys. How y'all doing?
Hey, doing well, Barry.
Got a question. Whatever happened to Kendall Kelly, who went to high school with Trey Kirkpatrick.
He did, and also Jarrell Harris over there at Gadsden City. Signed with Alabama as a wide receiver, then got a look at safety and corner, but injury situation is what happened with him.
Yeah, he had some heat-related issues that forced him to give up football. So, again, he was a good prospect coming out of high school.
Yeah, still, I guess, enrolled in classes and on
He may be.
scholarship
I'm not
at
sure.
the University of Alabama, but there's always a chance that somewhere down the road he could pop up somewhere else in a football capacity, but no longer on the team here at UA. All right, let's talk to CB in Tuscaloosa. What is up, CB?
Everything's lovely, gentlemen. 2-0, a roll tide. Listen, of course, my eyesight's a little shaky. When we get against some SEC teams that can turn it loose, is there, you know, I see some folks running around wide open. Of course, again, I may not be seeing too good. Are we going to be able to stop that when we hit that SEC?
Well, CB, they're going to get a dose of it a week from Saturday when Arkansas rolls in here. But, yeah, you know, I know what you're saying. I saw some opportunities that Penn State had to make some plays, and to be honest with you, they didn't execute. There were some open receivers a couple of times. But when you look around the country and you see some of the plays that are being made in the passing game, Alabama's defense looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1974 compared to some of these other teams. Yeah, in the way the game's played with the spread and all these people running so many, there's going to be opportunities in a game where every team is going to have a chance to make a play or two. All in all, though, I think Alabama's pass defense is one of the best in the country.
Well, first of all, let's be honest, CB. Penn State's offense is not Arkansas. So the game plan was a little bit different. I think when Arkansas comes to town, obviously they're going to be threat with all those receivers. Tyler Wilson, they rang up over 620 yards this past weekend against New Mexico, of course. But nevertheless, they have an outstanding offense. You know, Gary, the game plan will be much different defensively against Arkansas, and, you know, the enthusiasm or the intensity will certainly be very high.
I really like this pass defense, though. I mean, they got size at corner, they got speed, they've got two safeties that not only can play the pass, they can ring your bell. It's a good secondary, no doubt about that in my mind. Let's go to Coker and talk with Carl. Carl, welcome into TITV.
Thank you. I've got a question that's bugged me for a while. Intentional grounding is when a quarterback doesn't throw the ball past the line of scrimmage,
Right.
and he is not outside the tackle box. With time running out in the game, and all colleges do it
Right.
that I've ever watched, quarterback takes a snap, takes one step back, throws the ball in the ground, but they never throw a
Right.
flag. Is there a special rule for that?
There is. You're allowed to do exactly that. You're allowed to take the stop and spike the ball to stop the clock. That's just part of the rule.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's not considered grounding. If you're trying to avoid a rusher and throw the ball away and you're not outside the tackle box, it's grounding, but you are allowed to spike the football. Hey, thanks for the calls. We got more phone calls and emails to get to. Your chance to call in right now. Phone lines open at 205-348-WDUA. More TITV with Rodney Orr and myself right after this. Michael, we're going to get to you in Pelham in just a moment. First, though, I want to remind you about the radio program, Tider Insider Radio, every Wednesday evening across the state of Alabama. We're on in Huntsville, Montgomery, Mobile, Tuscaloosa, and just last week we joined 97.3 Sports Talk Radio in Birmingham, The Zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good show. And again, if they can't pick it up in those areas, if they're not in those areas, they can certainly listen to it on 977thezone.com.
Out of Huntsville, yeah. So we got you going there when it comes to TI on the internet, TV, and now on the radio as well. All right, let's go back to the phones and talk with Michael and Pelham. Michael, welcome into the program. Michael, you there? All right, Michael no longer with us, but I wanted to ask another question about the quarterbacks. Will the situation be resolved? Well, I don't think that Nick Saban sees it as unresolved. I don't feel like he's ever felt like this was an issue, even if they had played two against Penn State. I think he's preparing two quarterbacks to play. Both of them are team guys, as Rodney's already talked about tonight, and they'll go into a game each week with a plan in regards to the quarterback, much like they do with other positions.
Well, and that question, Gary, and again, I understand it, but at the same time, it implies it's a problem,
Right.
It's an issue.
It's really not.
It's not a problem. It's a problem when you don't have a quarterback. So Alabama's fortunate enough to have two outstanding young guys that are developing, and, you know, again, AJ right now is the starter, but Phillips still certainly a guy that will continue to be developed, as Nick Saban has said.
All right, Rod, let's get an email. This is from Bill in Tuscaloosa. What will Jalston Fowler's role be as the season progresses? Good question. He's the number 3 running back behind Richardson and Lacey. We know what they can do, but we also saw what Fowler can do. And he can get into the game in a couple of ways. You know, late in the game, if it's a hot night and both those guys have a lot of carries, he can come in fresh and pound a defense. He also can play the fullback role down on the goal line, as did Brandon Lewis some last week after being moved over to offense. But Fowler's a guy that he's a good player, and he's gonna get some time with this offense.
Yeah, and you know, when you you look at him, Gary, you know, his opportunities are probably, it appears, going to come in games that Alabama kind of gets out in front and has a good lead because of Trent Richardson, Eddie Lacy. It's going to be hard to get those guys out and give carries to someone else. It's also going to be interesting as the season goes along to see if Blake Sims is kind of incorporated in a role, Gary. You know, maybe not this year, but certainly a guy you could watch out for in a Wildcat formation, something like that, maybe as the season goes along.
Fowler, though, is a good player. Coming up, will Alabama break the 50-point barrier against North Texas this weekend? We'll discuss when we make our predictions next. Prediction time. Let's start with Rodney. North Texas is going to get a nice paycheck and a nice trip to Tuscaloosa, and that's about where the good news ends for them, don't you think?
Yep. You know, we talk about their offense. We talked a little bit about earlier their defense. They gave up 693 yards to the University of Houston last week. They gave up 408 the week before to Florida International. They're giving up 44 points a game, 52-0.
Yeah, they're giving up more yards and points than Auburn.
52-0.
Difference is Auburn is 2-0. I'm right there with you. I think they'll get on the board. I think they won't get shut out. Wouldn't shock me if they did, but I got it 50-6. Alabama should role play a lot of people and start getting ready for Arkansas that next week when it will be a much tougher football game a week from Saturday against the Razorbacks. Well, it's dinner time. Tonight we're headed over to the Pottery Grill for some barbecue there in Northport, Alabama. Come and join us about 7:15. And don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can find it on our website, WVUATV.com. We'll have the full telecast posted later this evening. Rodney will also have it posted at TiderInsider.com. Thanks for watching. For Rodney, I'm Gary. We'll see you next week on Tider Insider TV. And don't forget about our radio show tomorrow night.